On March 3, 1876, the sky over Bath County, Kentucky did not drop rain. It dropped flesh. Imagine standing in your yard on a bright, cloudless spring morning. Suddenly, you hear a rhythmic, wet thudding against the grass. You look up and your breath catches in your throat. A spray of fresh, crimson meat is tearing through the clouds, slapping against the fence posts and draping over the trees. This isn't a biblical myth. It is a documented historical anomaly that baffled the greatest minds of the Victorian era, triggered a disgusting culinary experiment, and exposed the dark, chaotic underbelly of early American science. The descending slaughter, the nightmare, began at precisely 11:00 a.m. near Olympia Springs. Mrs. Allen Crouch was out in her yard making soap. The air was perfectly clear and the sun was shining brightly. There wasn't a single storm cloud in sight. Then came the sound, a soft, unsettling patter like heavy hailstones hitting the earth, but without the metallic ring of ice. Mrs. Crouch looked down at her apron. A dark red smear had bloomed across the fabric. When she looked up, flakes of fresh, raw meat were drifting down from the heavens like a grotesque winter snow. Terrified, she ran inside. From the window, she and her husband watched the impossible manifest. The meat struck the ground with sickening, damp impacts, hanging over the branches of their peach trees like horrific, bloody tinsel. The shower lasted for less than 10 minutes, but it transformed the property into an open-air charnel house. Soon, neighbors, farmers, and local merchants descended upon the farm. The meat was remarkably fresh, bright red and oozing blood. Then, the story took a turn that perfectly encapsulates the wild nature of 19th century America. Two local men decided that the best way to identify an unknown cosmic substance bleeding from the sky was to eat it. They picked up several strips from the grass, wiped the dirt off on their trousers, and popped them into their mouths. "It tastes like mutton," one of them remarked. "No," the other countered, "it has the distinct flavor of venison or perhaps bear." The battle of the microscopes. By the next morning, the telegraph lines out of Kentucky were buzzing. The Great Kentucky Meat Shower became front-page news across the United States, while urban newspapers initially mocked it as a Southern hoax. The laughter stopped when actual samples arrived in the laboratories of the country's most respected scientists. The samples were shipped to prestigious institutions in New York and Louisville. The scientific community immediately exploded into a fierce intellectual war. An expert microscopist named Leopold Brandeis was the first to publish a theory. He announced to the New York Microscopical Society that the substance was not animal meat at all. Instead, he claimed it was nostoc, a rare genus of cyanobacteria that swells into a jelly-like mass resembling raw flesh after a heavy rain. The public breathed a sigh of relief. The universe was rational again. It was just weird pond scum, but the relief was short-lived. Dr. J.W.S. Arnold, a brilliant professor at the University of New York, obtained his own samples. He stained the tissue, adjusted his microscope, and looked closer than anyone had before. He didn't see bacteria. He saw striated muscle fibers, the exact structures that allow a conscious animal to move. Even more terrifyingly, he discovered cartilage cells and sections of mammalian lung and kidney tissue. Dr. Alan McLean Hamilton reviewed the slides and confirmed the horrific diagnosis. The narrative of the simple Kentucky folk was completely vindicated. They hadn't eaten pond scum. They had eaten the airborne, pulverized remains of an unidentified creature. The question now shifted from what it was to a far more urgent, terrifying riddle. How did the internal organs of a large mammal end up floating over a peaceful farm on a cloudless afternoon? Monsters in the mist. With science at a dead end, the public's imagination went wild. The most popular fringe theory of 1876 was the concept of atmospheric monsters. People believed that the upper atmosphere was inhabited by massive, translucent, jelly-like creatures floating miles above the Earth. They argued that two of these cosmic beasts had fought a territorial battle directly over Kentucky, raining their shredded biological interior down upon the town. Other, more earthbound theories suggested a massive, invisible whirlwind had struck a faraway slaughterhouse, sucking up thousands of pounds of butchered meat, and carrying it for miles. But meteorologists pointed out a fatal flaw. A tornado powerful enough to do that would have sucked up dirt, wood, and debris. Yet the meat that fell in Kentucky was perfectly clean. It fell from a tranquil blue sky without a single blade of foreign grass. The Vulture Conundrum finally, late in 1876, a renowned physician named Dr. Lunsford P. Yandell solved the mystery. The explanation, Yandell wrote, is to be found not in the heavens but in the unique and disgusting habits of the American vulture. Turkey vultures and black vultures are nature's ultimate cleanup crew. When a vulture finds a carcass, it gorges until its crop, a muscular pouch near the throat used to store food, is completely full. A fully fed vulture can carry up to 20% of its own body weight in raw meat, making it incredibly heavy and sluggish. If a flock of vultures is suddenly startled by a predator, or if they encounter a violent updraft while flying, they face an aerodynamic crisis. They are too heavy to gain altitude and escape. To survive, the vulture employs a radical, disgusting defense mechanism, projectile vomiting. By rapidly contracting their muscles, an entire flock of vultures can instantly eject their half-digested meals into the air to reduce weight and soar away from danger. Dr. Yandell reconstructed the events of March 3. Miles away, a massive flock of vultures had gorged themselves on a dead horse or deer. Something frightened the flock and they took to the air heavily. As they flew high over Bath County, they hit a powerful, invisible thermal updraft. Caught in the turbulent current and unable to fly, the panicked birds opened their beaks and purged. Because they were flying at an immense altitude, the high-altitude winds caught the falling vomit, ripping the pieces apart, separating the muscle fibers, and scattering them across the farm below. The warmth of the air kept the blood from freezing, and because it had only been in the birds' throats for a short time, the meat was perfectly fresh. Bright red and clean. The Grotesque Truth. When Yandell's theory was published, a collective, uncomfortable silence fell over the United States. High society scientists realized they had been meticulously cataloging, staining, and peering at dried vulture vomit, and the two local men who had boldly tasted the meat. They likely never spoke of the flavor of mutton ever again. To this day, the Great Kentucky Meat Shower remains one of the most thoroughly documented anomalies in history, a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying mysteries of the universe don't come from outer space. Sometimes they are just nature looking down upon us and clearing its throat.